Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Live with Tympanic Law. I'm Matthew Tympanic. It was an interesting day in court, to say the least. We have long waited for what actually caused Officer O'Keefe's death. We heard from the medical examiner. Um, we've heard from other expert witnesses, but today was really about how Officer O'Keefe died, and now the physical evidence that is connecting the defendant to these crimes. So a lot was said on Monday about Shannon Burgess and the fact he didn't have a BA and that a bachelor's, and that he didn't disclose it, and there's all this other stuff. And it's like, okay, all right. It could have been anybody. The digital forensic data kind of spoke for itself. And if you just look it up yourself, just plug in the longitude and latitude, you get the same results that he did. So it wasn't, and he was able to explain it in a way that was pretty easy. So I don't think that did as much to the Commonwealth's case as content creators and people who disagree with logic tend to be. So today was more started with Dr. Wolf. Dr. Wolf without the E, of course, because I believe we're going to have another Dr. Wolf when the defense puts on their case. Dr. Wolf's findings talk about what actually caused Officer O'Keefe's death and how. One of the biggest things from my perspective that I saw, and I posted this on Twitter, was this idea that the lack of a depressed skull fracture, lack thereof, means it's more likely than not that Officer O'Keefe was not struck to death by, say, a bat or a hammer. That's important. The defense's contention is this is a massive cover-up. He was beaten 34 Fairview. Yes, we know exactly what they're arguing. That testimony wasn't really challenged by Attorney Alassi. Attorney Alassi, for once, did not ask 32,000 questions that didn't come to any real point. And I was actually pleasantly surprised. Asked the question he needed to and sat down. That's exactly what we're looking for. That's what it should have been. And when Dr. Wolf is testifying, starts off, I'm a brain surgeon. I don't do this for a living. It's like less than 1% of my income. I went to Yale Medical School. And it's just like, okay, what this guy has said, the jury's probably going to listen to him. And a lot of the key was what he said. It's like, well, what caused the injuries? His head hitting a hard ground. So people have been saying, he's like, oh, don't you mean concrete? Don't you mean the carpet and no. A hard ground. It's the end of January. For those who aren't from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, in January, especially before the blizzard, the ground can be as hard as a rock. So if you hit it, it would be almost like hitting a huge, like if you've ever been to a beach that has a jetty with one of those huge rocks, that's pretty much what it would be, almost to that extent. And death wouldn't have been from this strike, wouldn't have been immediate. So that was also a very important point. So if Officer O'Keefe was beaten to death, wouldn't Brian Albert and Brian Higgins and all the co-conspirators would have made sure he was dead? Because if he lived, he could have told them exactly who actually did it. So that's an important thing. Death was not instantaneous. It was over an extended period of time. Why do you think the defense didn't challenge Dr. Wolf? Because they had no basis to. It would have made them look silly. And if they know they gotta pick their spots. Because if you don't, you're losing credibility with the jury, because when you're asking a bunch of questions, they're not going to be paying attention when you do have a point to make. And we'll get to the point that they made in a bit. Commonwealth at murder 2 yet? No, they're not. Because we haven't had the accident reconstruction, because that's going to be key to showing intent to commit a serious bodily injury. Remember, murder 2 doesn't require intent to kill. That's only murder 1. But you do have to intend to cause harm to somebody. That is a substantial likelihood that would result in death. Going backwards and backing your car up to a high rate of speed, that suffices for murder 2. But to this point, we haven't got there. Because what we did get, grass gets frozen hard, soil contains water. Yes, and that's exactly the point. A lot of people say, "Oh, it wasn't the ground." It's like, or he could have slipped on some ice. It's like he's like 20 feet, 30 feet away from the road. He slipped on some ice, hit his head on that, and then got up and walked over. No, very likely he got struck and thrown, and that's where he ended and hit his head on the ground. Because in that time of year, in late January, that ground is going to be pretty hard, if not almost rock solid. So hitting that would be it's more likely and not would have caused death. Um, do you think we still may be able to see went back before she found him and Jen and Carrie? That would have been in the vehicle data. So I don't think that happened because I think we would have heard that in the case in chief, unless they're saving that for rebuttal. I don't know why they wouldn't, because it's a situation where if the car goes back to 34 Fairview before going back with Kerry and Jen McCabe, that would be a really, really solid, a very concrete piece of evidence, being like, I knew I did it. Here it is. And if she doesn't call it in then they can lock in the leaving the scene of an accident charge involving death easy. So I don't think the data shows that the defendant actually went back before going with Jen McCabe and Kerry Roberts. Definitely. So what was interesting? Oh yeah. So I think I'll discuss the issue with the juror. What happens in these types of situations? It's like, okay, we got to voir dire the jury. And I think somebody said that two jurors changed places. It's possible maybe a juror was talking to a juror about the case, and the juror who knew, the one who spoke to him, the one who was spoken to, decided to go tell the judge that it's like, hey, this happened. Just so you know, it's like I didn't get anything else involving the case, but I needed to bring this to your attention. That's the right thing. I don't think it's never a good thing, but it's oftentimes not like jury tampering or something. Those are very extreme and very rare scenarios. So back to what Dr. Wolf was saying about how he was at a great speed. So this is what I've said many a times: facts win cases. And I'll never forget that when doing any kind of case, especially a criminal case, at great speed. That's what caused him to fall backwards and hit his head. Great speed. That's not caused by somebody hitting you with a hammer or a bat or something like that. Great speed is a vehicle going back at 24, more likely than not, a vehicle going back at 24 miles an hour, striking the individual and then going down. I wish Lolly would have nailed that. Physically matching just meant that they couldn't put them in a puzzle. Yeah. So one of the things I will say, and we got a little tidbit of first trial Lally. The witness probably should have been prepared. Christina Hanley should have been prepared to explain what object 3.18 whatever was. So we're not just hearing a bunch of numbers. Juries go nuts when they just hear a bunch of numbers and not hearing what those numbers are attached to. It's like this small piece of the tail light, every piece of the tail light should have been it was decided upon with numbers and everything, but the witness couldn't ID each piece. She only knew it as numbers, which works for her, but it's a little tougher for the jury. But when thinking about what Dr. Wolf was saying, he came in and he said exactly what he needed to be able to make that case, that it was a brain injury, that it was caused by striking a ground at a great speed. And that hard ground is what caused it. It's like he sees it all the time. So the jury hears that and they're going to accept that. It's like a hard ground. And it's like, okay, what kind of hard ground? The one outside where he was found. It's not a ground. He would have said floor. He would have said concrete. Why does so with concrete? I'll get to that question in a second. Ground meaning outside, dirt, grass. That's what they mean by that. And people who are on this jury knows how hard a ground would be in late January, right before the midst of a blizzard. Why does the defense object so much? The defense objects when they want to kind of cut the others, the prosecution's like their case, like kind of like stop their momentum. That's the best way to do it, because it's objection overruled. I'll allow it, and it's like I'll overrule. It's like sidebar. They're doing that because they want the jury to. People's minds are meant to only take in so much information at a time, and if they start to there are constant breaks, they're going to start thinking about other things. They're going to start looking at people, and they're going to often forget what the important piece of information was that they were objecting to, that they know they can't really object to, but they want the jury to miss it. Reed said that after court that Dr. Wolf is a neurologist and does. The defendant needs to learn to shut her mouth. I think that's impossible for her, as we saw with there's like 400 hours of interviews. Probably, obviously not all her, but because it just sounds ridiculous. Like, he's a neurosurgeon. He wasn't being called to perform an autopsy on Officer O'Keefe. He was opined to what caused his death. And being a neurosurgeon who performs surgeries, who isn't somebody who is a gun for hire, or mercenary, if it were. That's why Special ADA Brennan chose him to be the expert in this case. People are like, well, they have Brigham and Women's and MGH. Why didn't they get somebody from there? Because they wanted somebody outside the Commonwealth that the defense couldn't be like, you're connected, because everybody's connected to everybody somehow in Boston and in the suburbs. So if they have somebody from MGH, the defense is just going to be like, oh, you're related to this person and you were bought and paid for and this, that, and the other. No, instead they got somebody from Miami who has absolutely no skin in the game, who has no connection. And it's pretty clear based on Alassie's not even 10 questions that they couldn't even impeach him on anything. They couldn't do his LinkedIn post, his profile, and all the other nonsense they've done. So they had somebody who could be able to testify, who could explain it very easily, get right to the point, so the jury understands, like, okay, this is how the individual died, and the lack of them questioning, they're not really challenging the findings. So the states only had Welcher. Oh my God, part of it is when they talk about a case, like, there's still so many people on the list. Who's going to be called? Definitely Welcher will be called. I don't know much more than that, because they're not calling Brian Higgins, Brian Albert, because that just takes the case into areas that it doesn't need to. And it just confuses the jury about it. Okay, what is case in chief? All right, this is a very good question. Case in chief is when you're putting on your case. That is your initial case. So the prosecution right now is in their case in chief, which is your initial case. The defense then puts on their case in chief. And if it need be, the Commonwealth can then put on a rebuttal case, which is to rebut what the defense is saying. So this case is their case in chief. If they put on testimony and witnesses after the defense goes, that is what is called a rebuttal case. He has more brains than just that you're not a pathologist, and it's just the jury doesn't really know the difference, and they're not really paying attention. They're just hearing this guy is extremely qualified. He's explaining it to us in very simply, and not trying to make us all feel dumb, even though he's a lot smarter than us and he went to a lot better school. And that's what a jury wants. They like, explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, and do it in a non-condescending way. And that's what Shannon Burgess, whatever you want to say about his qualifications and everything, he explained that very simply in a way anybody can understand. And that's exactly what happened with Dr. Wolf today. He explained it in a way anybody can understand, and so simply, to the point, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty. Do you think they have met the murder to burden yet? I don't think so, because you need to be able to, the last piece of the puzzle is the accident reconstruction. So to this point, what the Commonwealth has for their case, they have the alcohol consumption. With the exception of the defense challenging in the first trial, there is no, they're not going to really challenge that the defendant wasn't intoxicated. She herself confessed in the documentary to being drunk. And anybody can hear that with the number of drinks, but like, given her size, they can talk about their, use their common sense and be like, okay, she was drunk. That's not really a question. So now we have, all right, where it could have happened. And it's like, he was found here. What is a reasonable idea about how Officer O'Keefe ended up in this location? That's the other part of it. And then it's the hair on the taillight that belonged to Officer O'Keefe. And no, for the idiots who tell me it could be the nephew, get the fuck out. It's not the nephew. It's not. It's not his hair. It's Officer O'Keefe's hair. And you can, like, the people who are talking about, like, oh, touch DNA. It's like, okay, fine. All right. But you still can't get past the hair. The hair is not going to, to answer the question, make my wife's coffee at 8 a.m. because she's usually running late. I've been doing that since we've been together almost 8 years. But yeah, it's just it's a ridiculous assertion. And when Alan is like, could it have been 30,000 to 1? And they're like, oh my God, it's Officer O'Keefe's hair. No person on the jury is going to be thinking it's the nephews or somebody else. It's very simple. And yeah, it was a ridiculous line of questioning. So you put that together, and today the single piece of evidence which I actually think prevented the acquittal in the first trial. When I think about how the first trial was, the evidence was kind of there, but it wasn't presented in a way anybody could understand who wasn't an attorney. And even I had times, like, I'll never get over the glass from Waterfall and calling the bartender. That like still haunts my dreams, that direct examination. And I'm like, are we going to come to a point, or no, not today? Okay. Today with Christina Hanley, this is probably the most important piece of evidence to date. It is microscopic pieces of the taillight embedded in Officer O'Keefe's clothing. Because here's the important part. What she stated, the microscopic pieces is the biggest one is the size of a grain of rice. So the jury is going to think to themselves, how big a grain of rice is. And it's like, that's what's embedded in the clothing. And most of it is smaller than that. So how is an individual who can barely pick it up, picking up anything smaller than that? Is it appropriate to see a client and an attorney? Yeah. It's like buying liquor when the defendant. I can't opine on that. People are like, oh, it's fake news. And I'm like, if they want to go do that, it's just weird to me. I don't get it. But I have other things to worry about in my life, and I certainly am not going to be like, yeah, okay, this is weird, but to each his own. But definitely this piece of the taillight embedded in the clothing is the single biggest piece of evidence. It is so far, because now it's like, and what I didn't even know is the photograph was actually what it looked like under the microscope. That's what pretty much what Christina Hanley is seeing is what the jury just saw. And you look at it, that looks like it's the taillight, and they're like, it's more probable than not, as opposed to, oh, it could be something else. Like, please don't blame like a red Solo cup. Please don't go there. And thankfully, it was just, and yes, you can see his shirt, and it's like a jury's like, you can't get past that. That's such a devastating piece of evidence. So even if you believe all the other stuff, how does this get here? You can't pick up this piece of the taillight. It doesn't fit in your finger. And that's exactly what I think in the first trial, what prevented the outright acquittal. Because, yeah, the case wasn't presented in a way, but now, and you could see it. You could see it in the defense during pre-trials. They knew they screwed up not getting that acquittal, because they know statistically retrials favor the prosecution, especially when you bring in a new lead prosecutor, you bring in new experts, you don't call all the dumb witnesses you called first time, that all that just what essentially inflame the jury. So they will say it's oh my God. And so I think I've been asked this question a lot about, are they going to call Trooper Michael Proctor? This is very important to understand. Special 88, Brennan's not going to do it, because then they're just going to ask him the same nonsense, and the case is just going to get lost in the Trooper Michael Proctor case. But if the defense calls him, it's like, okay, you can't call somebody simply to impeach them. So Alan Jackson can't go put him on and then just be like, you didn't do this, you didn't do blah, 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 blah. You can't do that. You can't, because you need to call them for a valid purpose. You can impeach your own witness, but you can't solely call them to impeach them. So, what is the reasonable doubt in the case so far, and how can Hank bring it home? Right. So remember what reasonable doubt is any fact that prevents the abiding conviction that the defendant, in fact, did not create this crime, um, didn't actually do this crime. So it's any single fact. So right now it hasn't gotten there. The defense is gonna look to, well, the ME said the injuries aren't consistent with a pedestrian strike. The ME is not an expert in doing that. When they tried to ask Shannon Burgess about accident reconstruction, he's not there for that. He's just there for digital forensic and like, here's what it is. I'm not trying to tell you anything. It's like, this is what the data shows. And the jury can look, knowing exactly where 34 Fairview is, knowing exactly where Officer O'Keefe's body was found. They can put it all together. Yeah, it's a new conspiracy every day. It's a new, oh, and yes, of course. So now we can get to the glass part of it. It's like, oh, look at this. Where does the glass come from? I was like, oh, God, we're gonna do this again. We're gonna try to insinuate that he was like more evidence planning and other glass. I was like, is it possible that the defendant, the alleged victim, just took out 2 glasses, and the one that actually struck him was a different glass? But even still, like, are you saying they planted the wrong? They went to the waterfall, stole a glass, then come on. Now we're in imaginary, forced doubt, ridiculous, laughable doubt territory. But they don't really have anything. They can't really attack the findings because you look at on the microscopic picture, it's a taillight, and it's not somebody else's taillight. He didn't get hit by another. It's the defendant's taillight, and it is embedded in his clothing. So all they're trying to do is allow them to breathe long enough to get to their case so that they can make the argument for the third-party culprit. And when Archer comes up and says it's not a pedestrian strike, based on what especially 88 Brennan has said in court, I think that what's going to happen this time is just an epic, we're going to say whatever it takes to get paid on this case. I have a feeling Arca is going to be like a laughable witness this time around. They were pretty bad last time, but especially 80 Brennan's just going to eat them alive this time. Is there any reason the defense could say they're calling Proctor? There's not a good reason. There is no good reason. They'd be calling him to impeach him. Judge isn't going to allow that. And they already heard everything. All they're going to be like, we heard all of this. What do you not have anything? By calling Trooper Michael Proctor, they'd be essentially taking our chances with a Bowden defense, which means that you're saying the police investigation was so bad that you can't trust anything, a judgment of acquittal. Do you think Karen will take the witness stand potentially or not? No. God. If she took the stand, she might as well just walk herself into the women's prison in Framingham. I'm sure they have a bus from Norfolk that could just take her after her testimony. Don't even need to wait for the verdict. They could just take her after. Yep, you could see fibers of the taillight in the clothing. A chance of getting away with it, blaming on have they any chance of blaming on a botched police investigation? They're certainly going to try. They're going to do anything in their power to win the case, because if you win a criminal case, people rarely ask how you won. When you lose, everybody asks why you lost, and everybody second guesses everything you do. That's how it works. Can they play the video of Karen's dad without calling him to the stand? Maybe, but it'd have to be offered for something else other than the truth or the matter asserted. Otherwise, it's just hearsay, not within an exception. I'd love to see her on the stand, but she's foolish to do so. She's too unlike. There's no world where it would be a good idea for her to take the stand, because for me, it's going to be every single question. Tank Brennan's going to have her on there for 3 days on a cross-examination. Do you think that there's no world? Because, let's start with every single one of your recordings. Explain this, explain that. Why does your car have only sensors on the front? It doesn't have rear sensors. Do you not have a backup camera So how did you not see Officer O'Keefe behind you? How did you not know Officer O'Keefe's vehicle at his house right behind you? Why did you not try to back up and turn away from it? All of those are just questions the defendant can't answer. And if they do so, it ends the case. Any kind of remote, slight gains and points they made are just, she'd be her own undoing. She's been the worst witness in her case, and she hasn't even taken the stand. So you can't allow one of the top trial attorneys in the state to literally get free reign to take shots at you because she can't take the stand. What's the story going to be? Is it going to be what you told 2020? Is it going to be what you told Dateline? You can't. It's just like you're telling three separate stories because it's not consistent. And that's part of the reason they're introducing. It's like, she's saying this then, she's saying that then. And you're going to take the stand, try something new? No, it's just not going to work. So it is possible. Yeah, it is like, it would make for great television and everything. It'd be the monumental moment. But she's not. If she takes a stand, she's not talking her way out of that. She's just talking herself into a prison cell. It's very simple. I love that in logical. I truly hope the jury sees it that way. That's all we're ever going to do here is just logical arguments. I can't. Some of the other content creators who will remain nameless, some of which are somewhat geographically close to me, just want to pander to people what is actually what they know not to be true and be like, oh, look at this fact. It's like, we're just not going to do that here. Like I gave props to Attorney Alassi today for his questions, and it's like, that's how it is. We're just going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the facts and the evidence of the case. We're not going to talk about the conspiracy like it's real. We're not going to be like, oh, look at this glass. Like, oh my God. When I heard that fact, I was like, God, we're going to hear about this glass for 6 days on social media, aren't we? And the official PR, the social media PR person, press secretary for the Free Karen Reed is going to be posting 52 things about the glass. I'm not saying that individual's name. Everybody knows who I'm talking about. Jesus. Thank God I blocked that individual. Do you think the defense will say John could have fallen and hit his head while drunk? That would be, they're like, there was no collision. There was no collision. After all this, he just falls, he trips, and then he hits his head and dies with pieces of the taillight in his clothing. A tail and a collision. It's just, it's not, it's what prevents the acquittal. There's too much physical evidence. What I've always said is this case is so much stronger than people online tell you. What happens online is people try to gaslight everybody to try to control the narrative for 2 reasons. One, because it increases viewer engagement in this, and more people tune in, more people get in on the grift, and they're like, oh, contribute to support the show. I'm not doing that in this trial. I may do that in the future, but I'm not going to do that during this trial because this trial is about facts and evidence. It isn't about grifting. For some of these people to do, especially the people who have their podcasts that are like, oh, conspiracy and Canton, or I don't know, Canton cover up and all the other ridiculous things I've seen. It's just like, you guys have never tried a criminal case, have you? And the answer is always no. Except for the people who ask me if I'm an attorney and I've tried a criminal case. And the answer is, yeah, I've tried over 40 cases and I've handled murder cases. So I know a thing or two about a thing or two. What about his arm abrasions? He has to have been hit. Well, we're going to definitely hear from the dog bite X. That's an animal attack. And it's like, oh God, here we go. And now then they're going to talk about Chloe, and the jury is going to be like, so did the dog just go out there and just bite him and stuff like that, even though there's no dog DNA in the wounds? Listening to people know she's guilty, say she's innocent. I can tell you that there are reputable, very reputable places that are reporting on this case. I'm not going to say which ones to protect my sources. That people it's not true. The conspiracy, know the defendant did it, but they're too afraid of getting quote unquote turtled, which means that you basically get doxxed if you say anything negative about the case. And I've had that happen to me more times than I can count. And it's still just not going to determine. It's never. Some people are too scared because it's like, if I lose followers, I'm not going to be able to renegotiate this and that, and I'm going to lose brand deals. And it's like, how about just report the truth and allow people who want to hear the facts and evidence? Isn't that a potential idea? And the answer is no. What's easier is just grifting. Gets a lot of throwback. I think Judge Canoni is doing, as she's done well. She's trying to prevent any kind of situation where this comes back on appeal, some BS reason. And we're doing this round 3 when she knows this should have ended in round 1. But like I said, we're here now. I think Annie Elise was sitting. Yeah, there's the content, the grift is strange. I'll never, the obsession, the happiest murder defendant. I've never seen anything like it. I don't think I'll ever see it again. I think the only thing close that I could see is somebody who shows up like when Michael Jackson was acquitted like 20 years ago of sexual assault, when people there was a riot broke out. That's the only thing close. But the people like cheering her, like she's one of the Ghostbusters showing up to the Metropolitan Museum. That's it is very strange to me, man. Thankfully, we're doing it early on, so there's not the barbecues and the tailgates that there were last year. It seems like there's less so, but it's just absolutely wild to see. But I think with that, I think it's best. That's where we end it for this week. We'll be back, I think we'll do a show on Tuesday because that's when next there's actually testimony in the case. There's none tomorrow or Friday. So next Tuesday, we'll do the next show, 5 o'clock. But for now, thank you for joining in Live with Tympanic Law. Have a good weekend, everyone.